Professor Musiopoulos, thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, honorary guests, students, particular our president from the Hellenic chapter and Peter. I'm very happy to be here for many reasons. I have a long contact with Professor Musiopoulos already, going back to European research programs 15 years ago, and the same with Peter Johnston, working in the Information Society Forum of the European Union. And of course, I'm very happy that the Club of Rome is involved here. Today, we discussed this last year when there was the 40th anniversary of Limits to Growth. And of course, the question is, what is with the next 40 years and what is the role of the economics discipline in shaping the future? Now, let me start with a few remarks. Limits to growth is not about growth in goods and services. That has always been wrongly understood. It is about availability of resources. There might be limits in resources. The question is, what can we do with our intelligence to make always a better life from a certain set of resources? And even more, it's a very important image to remember that the Stone Age times didn't end because of a lack of stones. Yeah? There was no problem with stones. The issue is we found something better. 300 years ago, the concept of sustainability was invented in the context of forests. Forests at that time were the most important resource. It was an energetic resource, but it was also the material resource for ships, for fighting ships. So wood was very scarce, and they tried to save the forests. And how did they save them? They found the so-called underground forests. And the underground forests, it was coal. And eventually it was oil and gas. It were the underground forests. And by finding the new resource, they could protect the old resource. Now also today, there is absolutely no lack of carbon-based energy. We have coal for at least 700 years. There is absolutely no reason to talk about any scarcity of carbon-based energy. The problem is climate. And so we will go out of this carbon-based energy, but not because there is not enough of it. It's just because for another reason, we need something else, yeah? And hopefully we can use our brains to find something else. There is also very many people who are angry, particularly to professors who are older, and they say, you destroyed the world and we have no future and you made everything kaput, yeah? So I now used to take the opportunity when I'm in seminars with young people to ask if anybody in the room would have preferred to live 100 years ago. It was interesting times. First World War was coming. Or 200 years ago was interesting time. They had this big battle in Leipzig against Napoleon. Yeah? And it was Napoleon who changed Europe. It was a really amazing time. Yeah? Is anybody in the room who would have wanted to be at that time? Or maybe in the year 1500 you could have gone with Columbus and discovered the Americans. Yeah? Is anybody here who would have preferred that? I find it interesting that I never find anybody, particular, I find no young woman that would ever have wanted to live 100 years earlier. And the latest, when you have a tooth problem, or if you have any bacterial infection, nobody wants to go back. Everybody is happy, yeah, that we live today. And today a lot of people live that at Stone Age time would have already been dead 2 times. Not 1 time, 2 times. Yeah? So the issue is not that we are destroying the world. The issue is always about the kind of civilization that we have, and for how many people do we have it. There's also some very romantic guys that think 10,000 years ago everything was sustainable. It's absolutely not true. 10,000 years ago, we were at the final culture of collectors and hunters. It was a very interesting time. There were only 20 million people at that time. The world can only support 20 million people living on hunting and collecting. But the interesting thing is, the world was full, and these guys killed a number of big animals that were a natural prey for them. Yeah, they destroyed their own food bases. In the Americans, they succeeded to kill the horse. The horse came later with the Spanish. When the Spanish took Mexico, they brought the horse back. But the people living in North and South America, they eliminated the horses by hunting. That was so much unsustainable, yeah? We know from Europe the importance of the horse to build our cultures. They had no horses because they destroyed their own horses. So it is quite typical for humans that they always live at the edge of something, yeah? We are Blade Runners. We test the system. And in doing so, with our innovations, we change the world. And maybe the biggest problem we have is that we changed it always faster. And by now, it changed so fast that when we think it's like that, it's already 3 steps ahead, and we not even understand what we are doing. It is an issue of speed. It's a speed that we do not really control and not really understand. So in a sense, we are overwhelmed by speed. One understands this best is if one looks into the number of people. It took until 1820 to make it 1 billion. In 1965, we made it 3 billion. Today, we are 7 billion. It's not even 50 years it took to get from 3 to 7. And in 2050, we will be 10 billion people. And the problems accumulate because these billions more people, they come in certain places, like in India. In India, there are now 1.2 billion people, and this is the country that has most of the poor people in the world. They all sit in India. India is the country with the biggest problems we have on the globe. It is because they have 1.2 billion people, and they don't have the development of population growth under control. That's a difference to the Chinese. The Chinese managed it, the Indians didn't manage it. That means within the next 40 years, there will be 400 million more Indians. Every year, 10 million more Indians. I think you have every reason to believe that you're not in easy times in Greek. But imagine every year 10 million more Greek. Huh? Try that for a moment, yeah? But that's not all. They have the Bangladeshis sitting aside, and there will be 250 million Bangladeshis and 350 million Pakistanis by 2050. Together, this will be more than 2 billion people in this small subcontinent. Now, even more problematic is Africa, south of Sahara, because they now 1 billion, and in 40 years there will be more than 2 billion. They add 25 million people every year. So, yes, we are a wonderful species. We can do everything. But the question is whether we will be able to handle this unbelievable speed of change. Now, Peter did already say, Peter Johnston, the one issue we have to balance everything is innovation. And it's very important to understand we need economic growth. Yeah? And now don't think that the Club of Rome changed its mind. Yeah? This has always been our position. The problem is on the resource side and the innovation. It's not on the goods and services that we need. If we want a reasonable world for 10 billion people, we need growth without end. We need not so much growth in Europe, but still, I mean, I need not to tell you what you need in growth. Yeah? We of course, we also need some growth. But the real issue is 9 billion people starting from zero, what they need. And I'm very angry with all this so-called post-growth economists now running around and telling the world sustainability is we have no growth. Yeah, we just must, yeah, we must find a way to be happy with less. Yeah, they now want a happiness indicator. Yeah, so they want a psychological program by which we happy with less, and then we add the psychological satisfaction. So adding this, we have more than before by having less. It's an interesting program, yeah? You need enough auto-suggestive power, then this might even work, yeah? But for a normal brain would not work. We need globally enormous growth, but this growth must come from innovations that allow us to do it with the resources we have by avoiding the climate problem at the same time. That is the challenge. Now, I think, and I completely agree with Peter Johnston, there is no principal problem from technology or physics to do it. We can do almost everything. In the year 1700, there were 700 million people. It's 1/10 of today. In Europe, 50% of workforce worked in agriculture. At that time, hunger was a typical phenomena everywhere in Europe. Now we talk about hunger in India. At that time, we had hunger in Europe, with 50% people in agriculture and only 700 million people on the globe. At that time, were more or less 30% of people were hungry, which is about 200 million people. Now today, we are 10 times as many people. In Europe, only 2% work in agriculture. We produce food for 13 billion people. Yeah, this is unbelievable. We can do whatever we want. We now are building cars. In 20 years, the car will go by its own. The sensomotoric intelligence of a car will be better than the ability of a human to drive a car. The insurance companies are already computing how much cheaper insurance will become if no longer humans drive cars. And I'm working with Vodafone on using the mobile telephone of the future in a way that when a child runs onto the street, already all cars know and stop. It will not be easy to kill a child anymore. Yeah? Of course, I think already what the troubles will be when the child notice that they easily can stop traffic by pretending that they run on the street. Yeah? What do we do about that? I don't know. Yeah? But the point is, we have no problems in technology. But interesting enough, we have today 1 billion people that is often hungry. 1 billion people. Now this is 15% of global population. And some guys say this is progress. In 1700 we had 30% people hungry, today is only 15%. Now then I say, but at that time we had 200 million people hungry, today is 1 billion. Now, in a sense, I find 1 billion hungry people is really nasty in comparison to 200 billion people, even if this today is only 15%, while it used to be 30%. The question is hunger an absolute or a relative problem? Now, I think, imagine you're really hungry. Does it help you that it's only 15% now that is hungry? I think most people understand that hunger is an individual absolute problem. We have now more of that problem than we used to have in spite of all that we can do. And the question is why? Why? Yeah, this is about sustainability. It's very interesting to see what the UN representative for that issue said 5 years ago. He said, if today a child dies because it's hungry, it has been killed. And maybe somebody will stand before a judge for that. Because we have double as much food as we need to feed everybody, and why does not everybody has enough food in a world where we have so much food? Why? Does anybody know why? Where is the food? Now, some people say we throw it away. Yes, but that's not the bulk of the story. Other people say we do bioenergy. Yes, it's true, we do, but it's also not the bulk of the issue. No, the bulk is somewhere else. Half of the food goes somewhere. Where does it go? Some think we have it on our hips. It's also not true. Yeah? It's not possible to eat so much. The average weight of humans on this globe is 50 kilo. 50 kilo. I mean, we have a lot of ladies in Europe who have 50 kilos, not so many men. But globally, on average, it's only 50 kilo. Why is it? Exactly, you have the point. It's in animals. It's in cows, in cattle. We have now 1.3 billion cattle, and the total weight of the cattle is double the total weight of the humans. The cattle is now the type of mammal that is the most successful ever on Earth. This is a globe of cattle. Yeah, there is a book, The Empire of Cattle. Yeah, this empire is not because of their brain, but because of our brain. And the problem is if you eat meat, and I like meat, not to misunderstand me, yeah? But if you eat on meat, then indirectly you need 10 times as much biomass to feed yourself as if you would eat the biomass directly. The problem is that the rich part of the world has so much money that we can put 10 times what we would need to eat into cattle, while the poorest of the globe have so little money that in the end they don't get the little bit they need not to starve. And this is a disaster. And so if we talk about sustainability, then it's about the question whether we can have a world that includes all people and that gets a balanced financial system and gets peace with the climate and has all the innovation needed to achieve that. That is the real challenge. And that is the challenge the Club of Rome is dealing with since 40 years. Now, to take not too much time, the question is, can we manage? Do we have a chance? Because there is another future possible that is not sustainable, that is not really a future we should want, but a future that could come. It's a global two-class society, which also is a two-class society in Europe, something that we did overcome the last 100 years. We can solve the problems by making most people poor. Now, this scenario will not seem totally unfamiliar to you, because this financial crisis was a mechanism by which a top group of very powerful insiders could use the economic system to their advantage and transferring the burden to others. And the result is a state of art which we call precarization and Brazilianization of the world, which is a state by which the problems are solved by a lot of people being comparatively poorer than they have been and than there need be. It's the Brazilian pattern. And that is an alternative that has a huge chance of being the future. And the question is whether we can have a better future, whether we can have a balanced future for 10 billion people. Now, the United Nations discussed this last year in the conference Rio +20. And this conference, of course, had a result that is not surprising, that is the same that we did mention here. We need green and inclusive growth. Green and inclusive growth, and then it can be done. And at the moment, another UN group is working on the post-millennium development goals for 2050 to 2030. And what do they say? Now we need green, inclusive growth. Yeah, it's easy. But in order to have that, we need global governance that works. And our problem is we only have national governance that works. We have no global governance that works. In Europe, we have a little bit intermediate. But in the financial crisis, we learned that the European governance is not sufficient for the Eurozone. And we know now we need to go more into fiscal unity, but this will have to include cross-funding, state border crossing funding. We have this within every state, but we have it not between states. But if you have a globalized economy and want sustainability, then you have on this global level to do the things that before you did on the national level. But it's a horror for many people, they don't want that. And therefore the question is, can that happen? Now there is two things that give hope too. One is, humans usually react in a crisis. They don't react without crisis. And I find this completely okay. I also do not react without crisis. This is all so complicated. Why should you try to change something so complicated as the world economy if there is no crisis? You would pray to heaven that you get 30 more years without crisis, and then you're happy you have that. And you would say, if I try to change anything, maybe that creates a crisis, because I don't understand that system. So the only reason to change that system is that it produces crises. And if it wouldn't produce crises, it would be a reasonable system. Our system is not reasonable. It produces one crisis after the other. So, okay, the crisis is a chance to intervene. And I'm very happy, particularly concerning global taxation and tax havens. We have now strict policy by the OECD and the G20. These things couldn't even be discussed 4 years ago. And now we have change. Now the people say it is unbelievable that companies like Google or Amazon don't pay taxes, and that they can use this global system to avoid taxes, and in the end, workers, professors, and small companies, they pay taxes, but the global actors pay no taxes. This is unbelievable. And now, for the first time, we're working on it. There is a second point. It is called the moralization of the markets. Very important, moralization of the markets. Very important from an economic point of view. We had a Nobel Prize for a guy that built a theory on a totally absurd concept. He said, we can understand the consumer by taking a kind of average consumer. It's a so-called representative agent theory. We take a representative agent, sounds nice, yeah? It's just one guy is a representative agent. And if we assume all behave like this representative agent, then all the conclusions we draw from this world with that agent, where everybody is like that agent, that is information about the real world. That was the first nonsense. Now comes the second nonsense. Then I said, and this representative agent, he is a Pareto optimizing utility guy oriented to money income. So essentially a human is a money oriented Pareto optimizing guy, yeah? And they all behave the self, and this is the basis of the economy. This is a nonsense without end, yeah? I mean, humans go for money, but humans also go for justice and sense and beauty and culture and love and family and all kind of things. Humans are complicated, but certainly not one-dimensional money Pareto optimizing types, yeah? This is ridiculous. Okay, now we have what is called the moralization of markets. Always more young people, good educated, in global networks, traveling around the globe, understanding global supply chains. They want only to purchase stuff that is ethically okay. We have a very important marketing subgroup, they are called LOHAs. This is the lifestyle of health and sustainability. The LOHA group is a 10% group with a lot of money, being very ethically in their decisions as consumers. And these kinds of consumers change the behavior of brand companies. For a brand company now, it's very important to be on the line of what is called sustainable behavior and corporate social responsibility, CSR. CSR is a big issue. All these companies are in the Global Reporting Initiative because they have customers that otherwise will not buy anything. So for them now, ethical behavior is not an ethical issue, it's a basic economic business issue. If they not behave, they cannot sell. And if you have intelligent people as consumers and companies that care for social responsibility, then politics can do things that politics never could do before. So let me say, we have a chance, and the chance has to do with understanding. Therefore, it's so important we in a university here. Therefore, it's so important that you have your course programs on sustainability-related issues. But I think it's also very important that you join with Club of Rome here in Greek to get this kind of thinking into the new, good, educated generation that comes. Because that generation can change the world with the new networking tools and with the new understanding, and by being part of globalization and by being part of a, let's say, moralized economic behavior. There is a chance, and that reflects the Club of Rome point of view, that with the right innovations, we can do what we have to do. These innovations need a global governance. This global governance is only possible if companies and people want. If we communicate that this is what we want, we have a chance, particularly with the next crisis to come. This is new economic thinking, and interesting enough, a very good Hungarian mathematics, who is the most successful financial speculator on earth, George Soros. It is the one who killed the first European monetary system, Soros, mathematician. He now created the Institute for New Economic Thinking and said, this crisis shows what I always knew, that this theory you have in economics is in part absurd. It's a completely ridiculous theory. And there is, the most ridiculous thing is to assume that financial markets tend to stability. Now, these markets are driven by insiders that earn money if it goes up and if it goes down. Volatility is what they make their money from. And what they hate most is that it is stable. And now we have a theory that it tends to stability in a world where the guys who control the system care for volatility from morning to night. That is what Soros made his money with, that he understood that, yeah? And he said, now let us make a theory that reflects that. And I think there will be a number of Nobel Prizes the next 20 years for a new theory that reflects this kind of reality, and hopefully this theory comes fast enough, not only for your education and for your later work, but also that we as humankind can reach sustainability and avoid Brazilianization. Thank you.